rides a sheep in wolf's clothing, the Aston Martin V8 Vantage combines British perfection with uncompromising performance.
This car for me is a shark. It's a predator. You can't catch it.
And there's a reason for that. It has a license to overtake.
It's going to be behind you and overtaking you.
Its developers have already built cars for James Bond.
More aggression, more agility, more anger.
Even on the most dangerous racetrack in the world, the Nürburgring's North Loop, this Brit bites into the red-hot asphalt. Keeping it in check is not an easy task.
I'm nervous. I'm scared. You feel alive. That's what it's all about. That's why we're here.
Aston Martin's secret agent, the V8 Vantage, is one of this sports car manufacturer's most successful models. Gaydon, in the County Warwickshire, is the home of this noble sports car workshop. 1,700 employees produce almost 6,500 cars per year on 2,700 square meters. Production numbers like these make Aston Martin one of the dwarfs in car manufacturing.
We've only produced a relatively small number of cars, about 85,000 in total. What's that? That's about a Toyota production over a course of about 2 or 3 days. So the cars are very rare. But it's that rarity that is part of what positions the company as a luxury company rather than simply an automotive company.
And luxury has its price. An Aston Martin costs between £125,000 and £6 million. And this is not just because of the high quality of the materials. The small number of robots in the factory alone proves that we're not dealing with mass production here. Every Vantage is unique, because only people can work this individually. It requires about 200 hours of craftsmanship to complete one of these sports cars.
Our hands are incredible, and how we can build with our hands is exactly why we use the hand to build our cars. So something very unique. Each car, therefore, has a fingerprint. It has the fingerprint of the people that were building the car.
The unique DNA of the Aston Martin Vantage consists of a V8 twin-turbo 4-liter engine. 510 horsepower catapult the powerhouse from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.6 seconds. The top speed of this English car is 314 kilometers per hour. The production of any Aston Martin Vantage starts with the construction of the body in the so-called body-in-white workshop. Here, 50 body makers produce around 150 car frames per week. A frame's job is to carry and later protect the drivetrain. At the first body assembly station, 2 mechanics fit several aluminum components onto a steel frame. These body components fit into pre-milled notches on the assembly carriage, like a jigsaw puzzle. Once the employees have installed all the components onto the carriage, it is transported to an inspection station. A computer then compares the position of the components with an image data bank. If all the necessary components are present and at the correct position, one of the factory's few robots gets to work. Connect the components, it applies a special adhesive, which was originally developed for spaceflight. In England, body parts are glued together instead of welded together, like in aircraft construction, which makes them especially light. The body-in-white assembly line is U-shaped in order to keep the distance between the different work steps as short as possible. The Vantage's body is assembled in 2 parallel processes. Beside the main assembly line, the glued components are assembled into bigger elements. The adhesive is still wet, which is why this employee additionally secures the elements with rivets. The pre-assembled elements are then transported to the main assembly line by a sealing crane. The body constructors clamp the two side elements into a press. It presses all the elements together in such a way that the connections fit perfectly. The workers fixate the construction with an additional 250 rivets. Lightweight construction is the Brits' prime directive. All the parts are made of 1.5 millimeter sheets of aluminum. Aluminum is a light metal. This will later help the powerhouse to max out its performance on the asphalt. But before that, a long journey awaits the Vantage. It all started out on a blank sheet of paper in the in-house design center. For 18 months, 25 employees kept working on the design. Every Aston Martin has its own underlying DNA. Since the Vantage was designed for sportiness, the designer's main motto was, "Less is more."
If you look in the side view of Vantage, you see this very simple single line. It's a very simple window graphic to the car, a very pure front end. It doesn't have a traditional Aston Martin grille. It doesn't even carry a side strake, which is really the antithesis of what we would always do in our cars, because as an athlete, you remove things, you don't add things. It has aero embodied in the bodywork of the car. There isn't an additional aero pack, there isn't an additional wing. It's all within the body because it's pure and simple.
The aerodynamics kit of the Vantage has been completely integrated into the car's exterior. The airflow goes over the top of the car and reaches the lip spoiler, where it provides downthrust onto the rear axle. The air taken in by the front wheel wells escapes through so-called side grills, generating downforce for the Vantage, above and beyond the weight of the car. This is what gives the Brit its body roll and cornering stability.
So when we're developing any car, we will look at the core competitor in that segment, and we will buy that car, and we will take that car and benchmark it and understand the performance. And that could be performance of things we do like and performance of things we don't like. Now, in terms of Vantage, our main competitor when we started the project was we went and bought a 911 Carrera S. And so we benchmarked and understood that car, which is a tough challenge because Porsche 911 is a very good car.
Based on the handmade drawing, the sculptors create a clay model of the vehicle. This way, the designers can see if their ideas can be realized and that they won't hinder the Vantage's aerodynamics and performance. The Brit's design rests firmly on the experience and the knowledge gathered in 100 years of company history. It's the unmistakable fingerprint of the people who build these cars, and it determines its unique value.
It's rare to see an Aston Martin. You recognize it because the form and the language of the car is so distinctive. We have 106 years of knowledge and history and learning and racing to employ within the design of the car. So we can look at all that heritage and put that into our cars. And that's very much what we do. We produce automotive art. It's a boyhood dream, in a way, to actually create something that you end up seeing on a racetrack.
And these 1.3 tons of a childhood dream will heat up any racetrack. The GT4 version, the Grand Touring model, which is very close to the production series model, has a more powerful engine and was designed for longer distances. Today, this Vantage takes part in the VLN Endurance Championship at the most dangerous racetrack in the world, the Nürburgring's North Loop. The so-called Green Hell features 72 corners, hill jumps, drops, and the longest straight on any racetrack, the 2.6-kilometer-long Dörtinger Höhe. After the qualifying, there's a flurry of activity at box number 28. The Aston Martin racing team consists of 8 mechanics and 2 drivers. They're getting the GT4 ready for the 6-hour race. The mechanics exchange the brake caliper units and put on new tires. One set of these black slicks costs about 1,500 euros. They don't have any tread in order to get the best possible grip. On the racetrack, the strain on the tires, the car, and the driver is 10 times higher than it is in normal road traffic. And overcoming the racetrack's difference in altitude of 300 meters is also very challenging.
But I think
The most dangerous thing and the most interesting thing about the Nürburgring is that no 2 laps are the same. There are several risk scenarios. What may happen is it's sunny on the Grand Prix track while it's raining on another part of the track. That's one of the greatest challenges all drivers have to cope with.
The first of the 2 drivers gets ready for the start. They are both so-called gentleman drivers, hobby race drivers who realize their motorsports dream by paying a not-so-small contribution. Right before the start of the race, it begins to rain. It makes the driving conditions much more difficult for the drivers.
there's a very high level of respect for the Nürburgring. Because you're going very quickly, and when things go wrong, they go wrong in a very big way.
The driver from California drives straight from the pit lane to the starting grid. The thrill is part and parcel of every race.
It's so hard to make a plan. I'm hoping the weather, it looks like it's drying up, so hopefully it will dry up and we'll have a nice clean race and we can just move forward and pick up positions. I'm nervous, I'm scared. You're supposed to be scared, right? I don't get this feeling going to work every day. I get this feeling at the Nürburgring.
To get to know the 23-kilometer course and the different road surfaces, all drivers first drive a pace lap. During this warm-up, overtaking is not allowed. The car's cockpit has been trimmed for safety. Special harness belts, racing nets, and a fire suppression system protect the driver in case of a crash. This endurance race at the Nürburgring commences with a flying start. As soon as the red lights go out, the drivers are allowed to go full throttle. They're off. Now, 148 race cars are underway on the most dangerous circuit on Earth. Pouring rain, the wet asphalt, and the small gaps between the cars make this race particularly dangerous. This will prove to be fatal for the Vantage. At the Aston Martin headquarters in Gaydon, the glued frame of the Vantage is ready to be transported to a gigantic oven where the glue will be hardened. A complicated and precisely synchronized program in the heating station ensures that the body parts are joined together as solidly as possible.
When it goes into the oven, it goes into 3 main stages. You've got a warm-up oven, which is roughly 150 degrees. Then it goes into the main oven, which goes up to 200 degrees. And then there's a cool-down oven, a cool-down procedure before it comes out the other end.
Before the last elements are glued onto the frame fully automatically at this huge assembly island, the mechanics prepare the parts with a special primer. Black epoxide paint protects these elements from corrosion and creates a more stable adhesive surface. Those elements that will later be exposed to particularly heavy strain are joined with a chemical mixture of 2 components. This robot, lovingly dubbed James Bonder by the employees, is applying the glue, consisting of resin and hardener, onto the primed module. Then the mechanics clamp the element onto one of the Body in White workshop's 2 automatic stations.
We mainly build these cars, they say they're hand-built, but you have to have a fixture, a jig, for geometry, so that we ensure the parts are in the correct location. So we've got master location pins where we fix the panels to, and then they close up so we ensure that they're in the correct position before they're cured.
The 2 machines now press the side elements onto the car's body, fixating the connections. A special kind of lamp is used to cause the mixture's 2 components to react. It heats up the glue to 130 degrees Celsius. After 15 minutes, the glue has hardened completely and the body parts have been firmly joined. During the last few meters, the mechanics attach all the remaining elements. All in all, the body consists of 170 parts. After 12 hours, a completed Vantage body leaves the assembly line. A ceiling crane transports the lightweight frame into the paint shop. Very strict safety regulations apply here. Wearing protective clothing is mandatory. At the same time, employees are prohibited from using cosmetics like deodorant or perfume. There's too big a risk that foreign particles might settle on the paintwork. After the first primer coat has been applied and allowed to dry for 20 minutes in the rapid dryer, a clear coat and 2 coats of paint are added. And finally, the robot arms apply another clear coat of finish. In the light tunnel, the painters can spot even the smallest of flaws. They check the fresh coat of paint for dust inclusions and paint runs. First, they use so-called daisy discs to carefully sand the relevant area. Then, they polish the surface to a mirror finish using special polishing pastes. This is how about 30 car bodies are produced every day here in Gaydon. A robot sorts and shelves them fully automatically in a high-rise storage rack. Up to 64 spray-painted aluminum frames are stored here. The range of colors is endless. Every shade imaginable is possible, from that of your favorite bowling ball to that of your girlfriend's lipstick. Now, the robot takes the next Vantage body from this warehouse to one of the factory's 2 assembly lines. At Main Assembly Line 2, mechanics put together Aston Martin's top seller, the Vantage V8. A screen informs the employees about the production progress. Because every 25 minutes, the assembly of yet another future racing car begins. Every car is different. Robots could never do such individual work. That's why every station also demands work by hand. It takes a total of 200 man-hours before a Vantage is ready to leave the factory. Before the mechanics continue assembling the sports car, they first, once again, take off the engine suspension and the doors. They were put on for the spray painting process, but now they would hinder the workers while installing the interior parts. There's no hectic work schedule here at the assembly line. The work atmosphere is relaxed.
It's a place where you get to spend a bit more time working on a car than elsewhere. You do get paid very well, if I'm honest. And obviously all your friends and family. There's a bit of glamour to it, I have to admit. Yeah. So yeah, it's a nice place to work.
This melody informs the employees that the assembly line is about to move. A ceiling crane lifts the next body onto a vacant assembly line carriage. Over the next 17 hours, the 94 mechanics will install a total of 10,000 parts in the car. At 40 assembly line stations, they will turn the lightweight body into a luxury vehicle.
Everything has a takt time behind it, because then we know how many cars per day we need to make, so it's all broken down into individual steps. So then every tech has an individual job and what he knows what to do. So any problems, he can stop the car, we fix it and then move on to the next station as well.
At the first station, the Vantage receives its own network. An employee installs the wiring harness, the car's nerve system, as it were. This bundle of wires supplies the steering system, all the sensors, as well as the audio system with electricity. Additionally, the bundle contains the network cables for the car's 8 computer systems. If a single wire is falsely connected, the whole car could later come to a standstill.
The harness is a really important part to the car to make sure the connections are right, because if you don't know the right away, but when the car's built, it can cause problems further down the road. There's loads of different ones. So like this one's a manual. We have different variations from premium, left, right, and left-handed and right-handed, which you all check from the build sheet to start the shift.
Every assembly line employee is responsible for 2 installation steps. To begin with, a mechanic engraves an individual identification code into the aluminum frame with a laser. He writes the 17-digit serial number in 2 places on the frame. It contains the manufacturer's name, the place and date of production, as well as the car's model and a sequential number. There is no time pressure here in Gaydon. The British manufacturer relies more on perfection than on production numbers. 2 employees now install the dashboard into the Vantage. They heave it into the cockpit with a special crane. Then they attach the 50-kilo leather-clad console firmly onto the sports coupe's frame with 31 screws. Dashboards have existed for over 100 years. Originally, they were just simple wooden boards, protecting the coachman from flying street dirt. Today, they unite all the displays and controls needed to drive a car. Next, the employees install the front and rear window panes. First, they put primer on the aluminum frame, while a robot applies a so-called polyurethane glue on the windscreen. With the help of a vacuum lifter, the mechanics then fit the pane precisely onto the car's frame. The adhesive consists of a particularly elastic resin. The panes are made from laminated safety glass, which means that the layers of glass are kept bonded by a strong interlayer. It gives additional stability and makes sure that no sharp shards of glass can enter the cockpit if the pane breaks. At Station 15, we reach the end of the first assembly section. The mechanics lower a special lift so they can pull up the Vantage, because next they will be installing all the components that go on the underside of the vehicle. The fuel tank is also made of lightweight aluminum. It has a capacity of 80 liters. The tank is located centrally over the rear axle of the car. Right beside the main assembly line, the workers put together bigger fixtures from several smaller parts. The drivetrain is being assembled at this sideline. It contains all the components that make the Vantage the predator it is. AMG's 510 horsepower V8 engine transmits its full power to the rear axle. Besides the twin-turbo, the massive steel frame also carries the clutch, an 8-speed automatic gearbox, and the drive shafts. Once the mechanics have put the powerhouse together, a ceiling crane hoists the drivetrain onto an assembly carriage. It transports the steel frame to the main line. This is a special moment because the engine is about to be wed. At Station 19, the employees marry the V8 to the car's body. The metal frame has now turned into a sports car. Back at the green hell, the Aston Martin race car presses on, working his way forward. It will cover a total of 35 laps on the North Loop today. Before long, the GT4 will have to take his first pit stop. The Vantage needs new slicks after every 8 laps, equaling about 190 kilometers. During a pit stop, every second counts. The pit crew could do this job in their sleep. The 7 guys get to work on the Vantage. In motorsports, there's a special way to jack up a car. The pit crew pump air into the so-called air jacks installed in the car's underbody through a high-pressure valve at the rear of the car. Air jacks are pneumatic car jacks. They lift up the GT4 within seconds. One crew member immediately hooks up the Vantage to the gas pump. The British car takes in about 100 liters during one pit stop. There's also a change of drivers, so both gentlemen drivers can have some fun. When all 4 tires have been exchanged, the mechanic opens the valve at the rear of the car, and the Vantage drops to its feet. The driver immediately takes off at full throttle. Out on the track, maximum concentration is a must. If an obstacle appears in the driver's sight, he has to react instantly. The physical strain on the body is enormous. During the race, drivers tend to have a pulse of 170 beats per minute. They sweat out about 3 liters of water and burn about 2,500 calories. But the strain on the car is also enormous. That's why the team managers permanently monitor the lap values on several screens.
It's very important to us to be able to show that the car can handle such an extreme ordeal very well. We're talking about extreme conditions for the chassis, the engine, and the transmission. And it's just great to be able to show that cars equipped with a series engine and a series transmission can handle this easily and without any complications.
But there are also things the Vantage can't handle so easily. Right after the stop, it gets hectic in the pit. Word over the radio is the car was involved in a crash. Yet no one knows what exactly happened.
Mitchell and I will do the back bumper.
Its hazard lights flashing, the car returns to the pit for an unplanned stop. The driver noticed a flapping noise and wants to find out where it's coming from. He slowly turns into the pit lane. Instantly, the crew is on the spot and jacks up the Vantage. The GT4 has taken a beating on the rear left. The rear apron is cracked. The mechanics roll the car into the pit. They immediately exchange the tires and remove the broken parts so they can do makeshift repairs. Exchanging these elements would take far too long.
I didn't know what was flapping at the back, so I didn't go very quickly coming in, but yeah. On the brakes, turned into the corner, and boom, and he hit me in the rear, and it kind of slapped up against the guardrail, and yeah, he's done. He's stranded out there on the side of the road. But I was able to drive the car, and it's actually okay.
It quickly turns out that the car can go back on the track. The second pilot gets in the driver's seat. Meanwhile, the mechanic crew is taping the rear.
Yeah, he thinks the steering wheel isn't absolutely straight.
Let me have a look.
Only 7 minutes later, the race car can leave the pit. Just to make sure the elements won't come off at high speeds, the mechanics put on a second layer of tape. Then driver Marco Miller heads back out onto the track. At first, he drives somewhat hesitantly. Before he goes full throttle, he wants to get a feel for the way the damaged car will behave on the course. It's halftime at the 150-meter-long assembly line in England for these models. They've made it past half of the assembly stations. A distinctively shaped front apron is what gives the British car its unique face. The mechanics install more and more components into the engine bay of the supercar. After the bend, the noble chassis becomes fully dressed. This employee puts the size 295 custom-made Pirelli shoes on the sports coupe. Now, the Vantage is freed from its yellow cage. The crane lifts the two-seater onto its last assembly line. Before it lie the last 100 meters of production line, the last 10 stations, and the last 5 hours of assembly work. With a hoist, this employee lifts the ergonomic sports seat into the vehicle. To prevent the paint from getting scratched, he has laid out leather mats as thick as a thumb. Carefully, the mechanic lowers the seats into the inside of the car. Then he puts the steering wheel onto the steering column. The frame fixates the wheel and prevents it from tilting while it's being screwed tight. In the center of the steering wheel sits one of the standard 4 airbags. The cockpit is getting jam-packed, which makes working inside it more and more complicated. Up to 80% of the car's interior is clad in leather, which is done in the factory's in-house trim shop. Here is where 140 employees produce each and every part of the British sports coupe's interior. They assemble the bucket seats and clad the fixtures in high-quality leather. At 4 assembly lines, the trimmers sew, laminate, and glue together 65 different components. Especially the lining elements demand highly precise handiwork. To avoid creases while cladding the elements, the workers stretch the high-quality material until it fits like a glove. For this, they moisten it with water over and over again, and then warm it with a blow dryer. This makes the sturdy material as soft as butter. These seamstresses make the seat covers for the luxury cars. Using different seam sizes and stitch patterns, they work the tucks and ornamental seams into the different types of leather. This makes every seat cover one of a kind. At the next station, a trimmer clads the foam of the seat with the decorated skin. For every car, the Brits need 6 skins. They are the skins of Scottish bulls. The Vantage's dashboard is put together at its own small assembly line in the factory. The employees clamp the naked frame of the dashboard in a rotatable mount. Then they install the steering wheel extension, all the control levers, and the air vents on the dashboard. The Vantage is now at the finishing straight of the assembly line. A mechanic puts in the doors with a vacuum lifter. He puts in the cables for the window regulators and the sound system and checks if the doors close properly. An employee installs the last paneling element. This English gentleman has traveled past 40 assembly stations. 10,000 parts have been installed in and around the vehicle. Next, intensive checks are awaiting the sports coupe. Quality control includes 22 employees. They check every single feature of the newly produced Vantage. At the touch of a button, the power seats should move forward and backward, and the windows should open and close. A mechanic lights up every inch of the interior with a flashlight. His colleague checks the switches on the center console. He records the check results in the car's system. The quality control has to be done quickly and effectively so the assembly line won't come to a standstill.
We've got a current takt time of 30.64 seconds, so everything we do has to be done during that time. If we're unable to complete that in that time, then we'll be holding the track and we'll be deemed over cycle at that point.
After these checks, the employees bring the asphalt junkie to life for the very first time. The car in front of it has already passed all the quality checks and now leaves the course. What rolls off the assembly line here represents more than 100 years of experience in automobile manufacturing. Aston Martin's company history started in 1913. When Lionel Martin won a race in Aston Hill with a sports car that he tuned himself, the name for his very own automobile manufacturer was born, Aston Martin. The Great Depression and World War I initially held up the brand's success. But when the factory, led by David Brown, moved to Newport Pagnell in 1955, a new era began for Aston Martin. Not least because of the production of the DB4 GT Zagato, a successful combination of British technology and Italian design, the company managed to be in the black again. The people in these brick halls wrote British automobile history. Particularly in the so-called Sunnyside House, many far-reaching company decisions were made.
New model launches, how they were going to fund and finance the new projects and the new cars, all of those decisions were made in that building. It's part of the family, it's part of the home, the spiritual home of Aston Martin. The Sunnyside is something we would love to get hold of again, bring it back into the Aston Martin family and into the fold.
The original factory in Newport Pagnell still stands today. And the mechanics still manage to get by mostly without machines on these 26,000 square meters of factory grounds. Now, here too, the legendary DB4 experiences a renaissance. To celebrate the 100th birthday of the Italian design center, Zagato, the Brits built 19 brand new cars of this beloved model. It takes about 4,500 man-hours to create only one of these collector's items. The body makers still forged the 1.2 millimeter steel sheets by hand. Apart from realizing this special project, Aston Martin Heritage serves as a kind of ancestral hall. Here, the brand's historical vehicles can be serviced or painstakingly restored to their original condition. These two mechanics are in charge of a very special project. The 1964 Vantage series is one of the most famous cars in the world. The iconic Aston Martin DB5 even helped Sean Connery in the James Bond film Goldfinger win breathtaking car chases. But here, it has nothing to do with machine guns hidden behind indicators or extractable blades in hubs. This film star is getting a general overhaul. Right now, the vehicle restorers are removing the engine in order to clean it and exchange vital seals. A restored original DB5 is worth about 500,000 euros. Next door, a new DB4 is given its roof liner. The elaborate work on the car's interior also takes place in the factory. At the in-house trim shop, employees produce custom-made paneling elements, steering wheels, and seats clad in high-quality leather. The trimmers use the same materials that were originally used. The historical cars need to remain completely authentic. And the trimmers at Aston Martin won't be without a job soon. Because of all the cars that have been built, 95% are still around today.
You never know what you're going to do in a day. You've got that many cars to work on.
I must have built 1,000 front seats in my time.
It just gives you pride in your job. Every day is different, knowing you're working on cars from the 1960s, you know, and making it the same luxury cars from the 60s.
It takes 70 man-hours alone just to produce the seats of James Bond's company car. "80 kilometers away, in Gaydon, a brand new Aston Martin is on its bumpy way toward the testing department. Here, the engineers will put every car produced at the factory to the acid test. First of all, they do the wheel alignment of the vehicles. The purpose of this is to make sure that all wheels are parallel to each other, so the car handling is stable. To that end, this employee starts by doing the axle alignment with a laser. Then the system will calculate the chassis setting. If the toe is off, the car pulls to the left or the right. The next testing station is walled in for safety reasons. Here, the engineers will test the brakes, or to put it more precisely, they will check if the brakes can withstand maximum braking force. The testers accelerate every brand new Aston Martin to 130 kilometers an hour. And then hit the brakes to come down to 50 kilometers an hour. They do this 10 consecutive times. After a short cooling down period, the engineers simulate an emergency stop from 110 to 0 kilometers an hour. While doing so, the computer checks if all the brakes deliver the right force. This test also provides information on the wear and lifespan of different parts. This convertible has to wait before the last gate. Another Vantage is just completing its third test. On the world's most dangerous racetrack, the Nürburgring's North Loop, the last 60 minutes of the race are about to begin. Over the past 5 hours, the 148 sports cars have covered about 600 kilometers. The Vantage is going in for a pit stop. While changing the wheels, the mechanics have to be very careful not to increase the damage on the GT4's rear. Marco Müller begins his last stint, which is what they call a period of driving between two pit stops in motorsports. On the final meters, the gentleman driver shows what his racing green monster is really capable of. The pit crew anxiously watches the final laps on the monitor. Starting from 67th on the grid, he makes up a total of 24 positions. Then he crosses the finish line. After the race, all the cars gather at the so-called Parc Fermé, which is a closed-off space. According to the International Sporting Code, drivers can file a protest against any other driver for up to 30 minutes after the results of the race have been revealed. That's why the cars will be impounded by the race officials until that time. This way, among other things, they can examine the cause of a crash.
What happened?
This morning, during the first 90 minutes, a GT3 smashed into a team member. It was quite a bang.
An exciting racing day comes to an end. While they start taking off their gear, the tension also falls off the drivers.
war dieses Mal alles dabei.
We got it all today. Some freak weather, everything from lots of rain to really sunny. The team did an incredible job, and I'm glad we all made it to the finish line.
Froh, dass wir alle zusammen jetzt ins Ziel gekommen sind.
If it is serviced well and worn-out parts are replaced regularly, a Vantage GT4 race car can live forever. In the last testing bay at the Aston Martin factory, things are a little quieter than at the racing track. But the strain is hardly any different. This Vantage is getting thoroughly shaken up at 40 kilometers an hour. The steel rollers simulate different road surfaces, from smooth freeway asphalt to a dirt road. The purpose of this test is to identify loose objects or undesirable sounds so they can be eliminated. The testers even check the squeaking of the leather.
Tests are quite simplified for most people to use, so they end up with just an okay or a not okay. But in the background, we have a lot of parameters the car has to hit before it gets that okay. So it's a simple test for the operator. Actually, in the background, there's a lot of work goes into making sure the test is robust.
Finally, this XXL blow dryer is put into action. This turbine simulates the airflow and blows air onto the two-seater with a speed of 150 kilometers an hour. This giant blow dryer also helps the workers find undesirable sounds. They record the results in the system. The engineers test every vehicle leaving the assembly line for a total of 2.5 hours. The next control team is waiting for the Vantage in a big light tunnel. Here, in the glow of hundreds of tube lights, spraying professionals check every millimeter of the sports car's surface for dents and scratches. Because of this zebra-like reflection of light and shadow, a car's defects immediately stand out. The slightest of imperfections calls for the use of a grinder, polishing paste, and clear coat to perfect the Sportster, costing well over 150,000 euros. This anonymous super sports car can only become an Aston Martin after a final overall check. Carefully, the mechanic unwraps the logo from the parchment paper and gives the Brit its distinctive wings. They are also reflected in the Vantage's design. The rear lights are the extension of the wings, covering the entire tail of the car. Finally, this Vantage is allowed to flex its muscles on the street. Aston Martin's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has been at home on the streets and racetracks of this world for more than 100 years. With sensitivity and skill, these 1,700 constructors of the English sports car manufacturer have been combining high-tech with craftsmanship. The V8 Vantage is one of these Brits' most successful models. And the future is sure to hold many more luxury cars made here in Gaydon that not even James Bond could resist.